Well, a ray of hope and joy of a financially constrained student getting the much needed financial support to realize his or her dream of acquiring a degree from a higher institution is quite a sight to behold and something to commend. Well, to this end, the government introduced the NELFUND initiative. Commendable? Yes, but down the line, that dream could be short-lived and almost unrealizable if he or she is being barred from the classroom and even from taking exams. Well, this definitely isn't the idea behind the NELFUND. The House of Representatives Committee on NELFUND has been asked to investigate the matter and submit a report on its findings. The man at the helm of affairs of NELFUND, the Managing Director, Akintunde Sawyerr, joins us on Prime Time. Glad to have you join us, Akintunde.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amok. It's great to be on Prime Time.
Great to have you too. Why are tertiary institutions not permitting students, like you just had me read there, who applied for the student loan, by the way, to sit for their examinations?
I don't think that's entirely correct.
Okay.
I think, we need to contextualize what we hear so that we inform the general public about what's really going on.
But that's why you're here.
Absolutely. So look, what I think this is emerging from is the fact that the students apply for loans. The institutions have their own deadlines. If students apply for loans late or the loans are processed late, then of course the institutions reserve the right, because they are self-governing, self-funding in many cases, or self-accountable at least. So they reserve the right to set deadlines. And of course, if those deadlines aren't met, those financial deadlines aren't met, they reserve the right to stop people from sitting exams or from attending classes. What we have done is put a scheme in place through the NELFUND. What the President has done is put this scheme in place to ensure that fees are paid. Look, if fees can't be paid, you can't sit exams anyway. You can't go to classes anyway. So the fees are being paid, but in certain instances where the applications come in late, the institutions say, no, look, we can't allow you unless you've paid. Now, guess what? What we're doing is we're intervening with the institutions and saying, look, as long as somebody has applied and there's a clear route or a clear path to them being able to get the loan, please allow the students to sit exams, allow them to have tutorials, allow them to go to lectures, allow them to have seminars or be part of seminars. So, this is an ongoing process, and the scheme just started. It's literally about 14, 15 months old. It's not really been around that long.
So, what I understand from what, the question of late application and all that, but what's the fate of those students as we're discussing now? Have they been allowed, or because, the reps has been told to do an investigation and get their findings or report within some time. But what's with the students who have experienced this challenges, as it were?
So I think the report that you're referring to by the House of Representatives is referring to the fact that some institutions have been paid by students already. Or in some cases, some institutions have been paid by students already. Some have been paid by NELFUND as well. So the institutions in some cases have received a double payment. Other institutions may have omitted to alert the students that the fees have been paid. And so the students don't know the fees have been paid. But I can tell you this is resolving very, very quickly. The word is out that students who have paid their fees or have had their fees paid by NELFUND should be given unfettered access to education. That's happening. I think what you're referring to is several weeks old. I think we've moved beyond that now. And students are getting access to classes, fees are being paid, things are becoming more and more regularized, because you need to remember, we started this scheme mid-session. Now we're into the second session. Things are aligning a little bit more. No strikes, no school off days. We're actually in a position now where education is being provided on a more constant basis and the funding is coming through.
What you just said a while ago is rather turdy. something like double payments.
Yes.
How did it come about?
Very, very simply. Look, before the student loan scheme was started, before NELFUND came into being, students were in school. So we are giving loans to people who are not just coming in afresh, but those who are already there. The opportunity to apply for these loans is there for those who are already in institutions. Some of these people had already paid their fees before they applied. Some had paid their fees before the scheme was launched. Now, in the instant where they could apply for the loan, some chose to apply for the loan. Having it processed and then paid to the institution means that a double payment was made. The student had paid, we as NELFUND had paid on behalf of the student as a loan.
So the students will get back their money?
So the students technically should get back their money from the institution. The institutions have been making great strides to refund some of this money to students. Some are slower than others. It's also important to recognize that there's a cost to returning funds. So some of them have returned funds short of what was actually paid to them because there's a charge, perhaps. These are administrative issues. They're not a big deal. There are administrative issues which over time will be smoothed over. And NELFUND is working very closely with the institutions and with the students to smooth these over. These are things that we must experience. We must go through them. There are teething problems.
Teething problems.
Teething problems institutionally, systemically, that we will have to resolve.
What about the allegations that 71.2 billion fraud was uncovered in NELFUND? Do you want to talk about that?
First of all, let me say that's utter nonsense, okay? What happened was that the ICPC, who are an agency empowered to investigate, corrupt practices, came out with a report that suggested that there might have been some funds diversion. The very next day, having challenged the ICPC, the leadership there did the right thing, and they said, look, there was an error in the statement.
On their part.
On their part. And look, people make errors. It happens. They made an error, but what is important is that they were courageous enough to say, we made a mistake, and they reversed themselves. And I'm very proud of what they did. That doesn't mean they shouldn't carry on investigating. Their job is to carry on investigating to prevent any form of diversion anywhere in any agency in this country.
When I was reading, I read about something called service charge. I don't know.
No idea. Don't know what you're referring to, but please explain further. Perhaps I can.
I was just going through. I don't know. I just read something about a charge, a service charge. I don't know what.
I don't know.
And I was just wondering about it, so I felt that I have Akintunde coming, so maybe he will explain that to me. Okay, let's just.
There's no service. So let me be clear, right? We give student loans to people who apply.
Yeah.
The loans are completely interest-free. There are no charges. The students don't have to pay anything to access these loans. There's no such service charge, certainly no such service charge from the Nigeria Education Loan Fund. We charge nothing to give people the opportunity to apply for these loans.
What is the nexus between students who operate digital banking platforms and commercial bank accounts as it relates to upkeep allowance? And what's the upkeep allowance about?
Okay, so two good questions. But let me start with the second question. The upkeep allowance is one of two loans that are on offer to the students. So when students come to apply for this loan or for the opportunity to access this loan, they have two loans they can apply for. One is for their institutional charge. That's the charge that they get when they enter an institution or at an institution. In some cases, it could include tuition at state level. In other words, state-owned institutions charge tuition and other charges. At the federal level, there are institutional charges. There's no tuition, but there are other charges. Now, that's one half of the loan, and they can apply for that and get it. If they get that loan, or if they apply for that loan, they're then eligible to apply for an upkeep loan. I can replace the word upkeep with stipend. I can replace it with pocket money. It basically means that you can apply for a loan to take care of your day-to-day needs. and those funds get paid direct to your bank account, as opposed to the institutional loan, which gets paid to the institution.
Okay.
Now, to your question around digital banks and commercial banks, we carry out very strict due diligence on the students that apply for these loans. They have to have a JAM registration number. They have to have an NIN to prove that they are Nigerians and they are bona fide people who we can trace and track. They have to have a matriculation number or an admission number really provided by the institution that they're attending. BVN is yet another check, because these loans, you can't apply for them in person. It's all done online. The BVN is a very important check for us. Now, some of the digital bank accounts are very basic accounts. They're telephone number based. There's very little due diligence done by the bankers, if you like, of those digital banks. And so it becomes difficult or impossible for us to verify who they are and pay them the upkeep. So the commercial banks who carry out and are required and mandated by the Central Bank of Nigeria to provide bank accounts that are much more closely scrutinized in terms of the individuals who open these accounts are easier to work with. So those who initially provided us with bank details of these digital banks, we were unable to pay them. Now I can tell you something. This was a little bit of an oversight on our part, because, you know, we're honest. We don't pretend that we're perfect at everything we're doing. It was an oversight because once they provided us with those accounts, it became difficult to pay them. We've begun to make those corrections. Students are giving us proper bank accounts. Some of them didn't have proper bank accounts in the first place. So they're going out to open new proper bank accounts. They're providing us with those details, and we're paying them their upkeep.
All right, let's run this, because at the time I want to get out all this. You don't, when I read this, it was quite interesting for me.
Yes.
You don't guarantee jobs, but you have plans to link up beneficiaries of the student loan to job opportunities.
So, it makes sense that if we want to get our funds back, you know, this is a loan. If we want to get our funds back, the people that we give these loans to need to have jobs. I'll make an important point here. If a student or a loanee has graduated, 2 years after they complete their NYSC, there is some obligation for them to start paying the loan back if they have a job. It makes sense in the value chain that we should assist in that process of helping people get jobs. We don't create jobs. What we can do is connect people with jobs. So one of the things that we intend to do is to set up a portal, attract vacancies and jobs into that portal, connect them with students who have loans so that they get jobs and they can pay the loan back. It's in their interest and the interest of NELFUND to make this connection. And it's a very, very small investment for us to make, given the potential value that it brings back to the students or
and
to the
so
loanees
you won't
and to
lose
us.
your money, of course. You know, nobody wants to lose their money.
Yeah,
I remember
absolutely.
loaning somebody some money, and I really go praying for the person that God has to give him money so he can give me money. Because if he doesn't have a job or something to do, get back my money, I won't get back my money. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
How cumbersome and accessible is it to apply for this loan in the light of, you know, Nigeria, MNM, YWK, by that I mean man no man, or who you know syndrome, yeah.
So again, you know, I laugh tongue in cheek because I know that you are absolutely right. This is a syndrome that affects us all. I can tell you though that let's be careful. 80% of the jobs that people get in the UK, in the United Kingdom, are not advertised. In other words, man no man happens even there.
Yeah.
However, with specific respect to this loan, we've set this up to be a loan where you apply for it by approaching our portal, www.nelf.gov.ng. When you get to that portal, every single step of the application is digital. You never meet another person. There's no guarantor required. You provide specific key identifiers. I've touched on them earlier. JAM, which we API into the JAM database, it comes back in seconds to confirm that the JAM number is real and it matches with the name and the date of birth. NIN, we go through to NIMC, again API, which is an electronic handshake with the NIMC database that confirms the NIN. We have an internal database that we've built up, working with the institutions, provides with the matriculation number or the admission number, the course fee. All of those things get checked without you having to meet a single soul.
Beautiful.
So the man-no-man syndrome does not feature in what we're doing. The only connection you need with this is an internet connection. If you don't have one of those,
internet connection. That's the connection.
It's impossible to get this loan unless, because we're not paper-based, unless you have an internet connection. Yeah. And we recognize that, you know, that in itself is not always the easiest thing to get. But we want to eliminate the opportunity for gateways, for graft, for people to come and insert themselves in the process and exploit students.
And I was going to ask you, what are your challenges? What are your challenges? But you tack it along with how many students, talking data overall, have at present benefited from these loans? Do you have that data?
Yes, we have that data. So I can tell you today that as of this morning, we had 733,000 students who've registered for the loan. Across the nation, 733,000 students as of 8:10 this morning. 724,000 students have applied for the loan. And to date, we have 449,000 beneficiaries. A beneficiary is somebody whose fees have been paid, and in some cases have had their fees and the upkeep provided to them. So 449,000 people are in that category. Talking further around the numbers, the 449,000 beneficiaries are from 218 institutions. Tertiary institutions at federal or state government level, 47 billion naira have been paid to those institutions on behalf of these 449,000.
And the student applied twice?
Impossible to apply twice, yeah.
Impossible.
And finally, the upkeep, just on the numbers, the upkeep paid so far is 38 billion naira.
In case of defaulters, what system have you put in place either to forestall or recover the loans?
Well, I think if you look at what I described as the process, we have put systems in place to ensure that in the first place we're giving the loans to people that we can identify, that we can trace, that we can find. The BVN requirement that I touched on earlier means that we can track even their bank accounts to see, you know, that those accounts are active or inactive. In terms of loan recovery, there is no obligation. The president was very careful with this. He didn't want students to be penalized for taking a loan to go and get an education. So the obligation to pay the loan back is on the employer. When an employer employs, they go to a database to identify whether the person they're employing has a loan with the NELFUND or not. If they have a loan with the NELFUND, the employer is obliged to deduct 10% with the permission or the consent of the employee. 10% of those fees, of their salary or their wages, depending on whether they're weekly workers or monthly work, can then be remitted to the NELFUND account. The obligation is on the employer, not on the student.
All right.
Unless, of course, the student, or the loanee rather, because they're probably no longer students by this time, the loanee is self-employed, in which case they have an obligation to pay that 10%.
Akintunde Sawyerr, I would have put in more, but my director is telling me that's my final question. So, Managing Director of NELFUND, glad having you on Arise Prime Time.
Thank you very much for having me here. Indy?
Indy, yes.
I love the name. Thank you.
All right. You're watching, you just watched Arise Prime Time playing. Oh, well, that's the end, actually, of this particular program today. Do join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.